You probably think Seattle or London has the worst weather on Earth. But imagine a rainstorm that starts this morning and doesn't stop for 2 million years. This isn't the plot of a sci-fi movie. It is a real event that actually happened on our planet. Scientists call it the Carnian Pluvial episode. But let's just call it the longest rain in history. It turned the entire world into a hot, steaming swamp and completely rewrote the history of life. But here's the crazy part. Without this disaster, you wouldn't know what a T-Rex is. This endless storm is the only reason dinosaurs ended up ruling the world. Let's travel back 232 million years to the supercontinent Pangaea, long before the rain began. Picture a world that looks like an endless version of the Arizona desert, or Death Valley, baked by a relentless sun. It was a dry, red, and dusty hellscape, where water was more precious than gold. In this brutal environment, dinosaurs were absolute nobodies. They weren't the giants you see in Jurassic Park. They were tiny, anxious creatures, about the size of a medium dog or a turkey. They spent their days hiding in the shadows, just trying not to become lunch. They didn't rule the planet. They were the underdogs living on the sidelines. The real kings of this dry world were giant, crocodile-like monsters and heavy reptiles that thrived in the heat. These beasts were slow and armored, perfectly built for a world without water. Dinosaurs, with their high metabolism and constant need for energy, were losing the evolutionary race. They were fast and agile, but in a desert, speed doesn't matter as much as conserving water. It looked like they were destined to remain small and insignificant forever. But then, the rules of the game changed overnight. Dark clouds gathered over the coast of Pangaea, fueled by a massive volcanic eruption far to the north. The sky turned black, the temperature rose, and the first drop fell. And then another, and another, until the dry plains turned into mud. This wasn't just a storm. It was the spark that would ignite the age of dinosaurs. The rain washed away the old empire and gave the losers a chance to take the throne. If you think you know what humid feels like because you've been to Florida in July, think again. During the Carnian Pluvial episode, the Earth became a global sauna on steroids. The temperature spiked, turning the entire planet into a suffocating tropical hothouse. The red, dusty deserts of Pangaea didn't just get wet, they drowned. Violent rivers carved up the landscape, turning solid ground into endless, deep swamps. It was a world of mud, sticky, hot, and everywhere. But the biggest change was the greenery. Before the rain, plants were scarce and tough, but now, the forest exploded with life. Trees and ferns grew at a terrifying speed, reaching the height of modern skyscrapers. These forests were dark, dense, and nearly impenetrable. It was a paradise for insects, which multiplied in the heat, but for anything living on the ground, it was a nightmare. The ground was no longer solid. It was a liquid mush that made walking exhausting. The air was heavy and smelled of rotting vegetation. Trees grew so fast and died in such huge numbers that they fell into the water and didn't have time to decompose. They just piled up, layer upon layer, for thousands of years. Here is a mind-blowing fact. Those piles of undecayed trees from this exact rainy period are what we dig up today. A huge portion of the coal that powers our modern world comes from this 2 million year storm. We are literally burning the leftovers of the Great Rain. While the dinosaurs were starting to thrive in this wet new world, the old kings of the planet were dying in agony. The main victims were creatures like rhynchosaurs and dicynodonts, massive, clumsy herbivores that looked like a mix between a hippo and a giant lizard. For millions of years, they had lived like kings, munching on the soft, easy-to-chew plants of the dry plains. But the rain didn't just bring water. It completely changed the menu. The soft ferns they loved disappeared, replaced by tall, tough conifer trees, protected by hard bark, needles, and sticky resin. The old reptiles simply didn't have the teeth to process this new, tough vegetation. Their mouths were built for mush, not for grinding wood. Imagine walking into a grocery store where every shelf is full, but the only food available is wooden planks. That was the cruel irony of the Carnian event. The world was greener than ever, overflowing with life, yet the giants were starving to death in the middle of a buffet. Their stomachs couldn't digest the new flora, and their teeth wore down to the gums trying to chew it. As the herbivores collapsed, the entire house of cards fell down with them. The terrifying predators that hunted them, like the crocodile-like Pastosuchus, suddenly had nothing to eat and vanished alongside their prey. The devastation even spilled into the oceans, where acid runoff from the land killed the coral reefs, replacing colorful life with slime and bacteria. So, where did all this water come from? We know that the amount of water on Earth is constant, so it didn't just magically fly in from outer space. The answer lies buried deep underground, in a place geologists call Wrangalia. Today, the remains of this geological beast are scattered along the calm coasts of British Columbia and Alaska. But 230 million years ago, this wasn't a hiking destination. It was a massive volcanic plateau that cracked open. This wasn't a normal eruption like Mount St. Helens, where a volcano blows its top and goes back to sleep. Instead, imagine a wound in the Earth's crust that bled lava continuously for thousands of years. But the lava wasn't the main problem. The invisible killer was the gas. These eruptions pumped thousands of gigatons of carbon dioxide into the sky, creating a greenhouse effect that choked the planet. This sudden spike in carbon dioxide turned the atmosphere into a heat trap, warming the oceans by nearly 7 degrees Fahrenheit, or 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. Simple physics took over. Hot water evaporates faster than cold water. The oceans began to boil off into the sky at a frantic pace, turning the atmosphere into a giant, soaked sponge. Huge winds pushed these heavy, moisture-filled clouds over the supercontinent of Pangaea. When this hot, wet air hit the cooler land, it dumped its load, creating the endless rain we have been talking about. The system became a deadly, self-sustaining engine. Volcanoes heated the world, oceans turned to steam, rain flooded the land, and the water flowed back into the ocean only to be heated and evaporated again. This cycle spun out of control for nearly 2 million years, until the volcanoes of Wrangalia finally went quiet. Only then did the skies clear, revealing a completely new world. How do we know any of this actually happened? You can't put rain in a museum. Water doesn't leave a skeleton behind like a dinosaur does. So, for a long time, this 2 million year storm was completely invisible to science, a ghost story without proof. The breakthrough was a detective story written in stone. Geologists studying the Triassic period usually see miles of bright red sandstone. That red color is literally rust, iron oxide that forms only in bone-dry desert climates. But then, they started noticing a strange glitch in the rock layers all over the world, from Italy to Israel and the United States. In the middle of all that dry red rock, there was suddenly a thin, ugly layer of gray clay, river pebbles, and black coal. In the language of geology, gray means water, swamps, and a lack of oxygen. The most dramatic evidence is found in the Dolomites in Italy. You can look at the mountain and see layers of dry rock, and then boom, a violent, chaotic layer of ancient mud and river deposits. And then, just as suddenly, the rock goes back to being dry and red. Carbon dating confirmed the impossible. Every single one of these wet layers across the globe is exactly 232 million years old. This wasn't a local flood in someone's backyard. It was a planetary event. The rocks don't lie. The world really did drown. We are conditioned to think that an apocalypse looks like a Hollywood movie, a giant asteroid hitting the Earth, or a nuclear explosion. But the Carnian Pluvial episode teaches us something terrifyingly different. The end of the world can be quiet, wet, and slow. For the creatures living through it, it didn't feel like a catastrophe. It just felt like a rainy Tuesday for 2 million years. They probably looked up at the gray sky and thought, "Man, the weather has been terrible lately," not realizing that their entire timeline was being erased. But in the grand scheme of history, this rain washed away one era to build another. The water drowned the clumsy giants of the past and fed the ancestors of the dinosaurs, literally growing the Jurassic Park we know today. It reminds us that Earth is not a dead rock. It is a living, volatile machine, where even simple rain can become a weapon of mass extinction. As we look at our own changing climate and watch storms get stronger every year, it's worth remembering a simple fact. The sky has opened up before, changing everything forever. And there is no guarantee it won't decide to do it again.